Hello girlies, it's time for another pot and kiki session. I feel like we haven't had one of these in like 965 million years, but we're having one today, and this time around it's going to be very you-centered, not me-centered. Because don't you just hate it when a creator makes everything about themselves?
Oh, honey, girl.
So I actually put up a community tab thingy both on YouTube and on Instagram, and I asked you guys to send me questions that you have about your plant collection, your plant inquiries, your plant troubles, your plant needs. And while we report some of these, my girlies, we're going to talk about your plants and how to take care of them, you know, answer some of your plant queries and advice. I may not be an expert, but I have 4 years of experience, and I think I know one or two things about plants, so my advice may come in handy. The first plant that I'm going to be reporting is this Ficus shriviana. This babe here has been desperately begging for a report. I feel like each time I pass her, she's like, help, report to me. I have a new notepad. This one is for the it's less shady. And I'm going to be using it for less shady endeavors like this video. But let's proceed with the questions. I'm trying to figure out where I wrote this. Oh God. But okay, the first question here is from Curly Jess, and she asks I've got a Calathea with leaves rolled up for no reason. Leaves won't flatten back. Don't worry, babes, I've got you. So when you see your Calathea constantly rolling its leaves up, oh my God, can you see how rebound this was? So sorry, babes, so sorry. I'm not one of those people that when I'm reporting a plant, I'm gonna be like disturbing the roots. I don't do that. I literally just carry it like this, get my pot, put some cell, and I'm good to go. For the most part, except that plant has issues with the roots, or it has pest issues, or whatever. Anyways, back to your questions. Okay, back to your questions. Okay. When you have a Calathea that the leaves are always curled up, it means one of two things. It could be one of these two things rather. The first is that it's getting way too much light than it can handle. So some of these Calatheas actually prefer medium light. They do not want like light that is too in their face or too bright. So if you have that plant right next to a window, or if you have it right underneath your grow light, or even close to a grow light, and you see it curling its leaves constantly, then it could mean that babe is telling you, oh my God, it's the weather, it's too harsh for me, so I'm gonna curl my leaves to defend myself. So Calatheas will do that when they're exposed to too much bright light, and certainly to direct light. Not all of them, but the more phototrophic ones, or I think that's the term. And then another thing could be your Calathea isn't getting watered enough. So if your potting mix is too chunky, if your potting mix is not retaining enough moisture, then your Calathea will end up being too thirsty, and as a sign of protest, the leaves are just gonna fold up constantly. So it's either you're giving sis way too much light that she can handle, Jess, or you're not watering babes enough. Okay, so you might want to check if one of the two is the case, or either of the two is the case. All right, okay. I hope that solves the problem, Jess, but let's quickly pot this girly up. I think I've told you guys why I have a preference for potting plants in bigger pots in this part of the world. It's because they get rebound really fast. We have a very long growing season. Plants pretty much grow throughout the year. Yeah, so if you keep putting them in these small pots, it becomes redundant because you're gonna have to keep reporting over and over again. So I think this is just perfect. Look at the material. Okay, moving on to the next one. So what we're going to be doing basically is I'm going to be answering one question from YouTube and then one question from Instagram. And this one is from Instagram. This person goes, please recommend good indoor plants that aren't too high maintenance. I've got you, girl. So I'm going to be recommending 5. I would typically have recommended a snake plant, but I feel like a snake plant is beginner friendly, but like there's so much misinformation about it that beginners are more likely to stumble on false information or misinformation than accurate information on the internet. If you want to know how to accurately take care of your snake plant, I have made a video. Check it out, it's gonna be in the description. But yeah, my go-to 5 will be, again, oh my goodness, look at how rebound this girlie is. Oh my god, guys, can you see? And then in the process of bringing her over for this video, I snapped what was becoming a pop. Okay, all right, we're gonna be moving this babe to a wider pot. You see, guys, I said I'm so horrible at multitasking. I've almost forgotten I have to answer this question. Oh dear Lord. So we're gonna be moving this babe to a wider pot. And if you watched my snake plant YouTube video, you know why I recommend wider shallow pots, and wide pots of this dimension are like amazing for snake plants. Okay, go check that video out after this. Okay, so the 5 plants I recommend, definitely your cast iron plant. You want to get a cast iron plant. That is like the most amazing decor plants that there is. You may have a plant called cast iron. You know it's going to be a toughie. It's going to be a tough one. So I'll say get a cast iron plant, and of course you want to get a golden pothos. You can never go wrong with a golden pothos or any green pothos. I have one back there, just there, and sis has been dumped there. Practically treat her like trash. Yeah, she's still doing great. So you do want to get yourself a pothos, you know, of the green variety, a trailing one. You want to stay away from the climbing one, because these climbing plants, they need a bit more experience before you can tackle them, right? And then also you want to get yourself a Monstera adansonii. I have sis right there as well. Have you noticed that these 2 plants I mentioned are in areas where they don't get a whole ton of light, but they still do okay, which is one of the reasons why I'm recommending them to you. Monstera adansonii, by far, and in my experience and in my opinion, one of the easiest Monstera plants that there is. Then a Philodendron Boilermax. That philodendron is a weed. In fact, the only challenge you have is that the plant is going to take over your house if you grow it in optimal conditions. It is a hardy weed. Sometimes I ask myself, is this a plant, or is this a parasitic organism that just wants to grow all over my garden? That's how hardy it is. And of course, I wouldn't finish these suggestions without mentioning aglonemas. You do want to get yourself aglonema. They are drought tolerant, they are beautiful. Get the green variety. The green variety is more tolerant of lower light conditions than these colorful ones that need bright light to sustain them. Yes, I hope that answers that, love. I can't remember your name, but I'm gonna insert it in the video. Right, so one thing about me is I always start off with a spade and then I quickly move to my hand. I'm like, girl, you're not doing the work fast enough. I quickly move to my hand. So guys, are you enjoying this video so far? If you are, please give it a thumbs up. Okay, support your homegirl by liking and subscribing to this video. Okay, so next person asks, Gabriel, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name properly. Gabrielle. Okay, she asks how to not overwater. Okay, I use a chunky soil, but it seems like waiting till the top layer is too soon. Okay, I agree with you, babes. I think that's actually too soon. I'm assuming you're growing your plants indoors. Okay, so the rule of thumb for me is, for my plants that I grow indoors, regardless of what plant there is, I always water when the soil is dry, when the soil is completely dry. Now, it's one thing to water your plants when the soil is completely dry, and it's another thing to leave them to stay completely dry. I do not advise leaving a lot of plants to stay completely dry for a prolonged period of time, no, but for me, to be on the safe side for my indoor girlies, I only water them when the soil is completely dry. Every single one of them. I try not to leave them to stay dry for too long, because some plants, especially the ones that love to stay moist in the wild, like your ferns, your peace lilies, all of that, yada yada yada, those girlies don't like to stay dry for too long, right? But the rule of thumb is, for indoor plants, to prevent overwatering, I strongly recommend, and I give this advice to my clients, just water when the soil is completely dry. Okay, so babes, you're gonna have to start watering your plants when the soil, your indoor girlies, Gabriel, you're gonna have to start watching your indoor girlies when the soil is completely dry. Okay, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Like, I'm Nigerian, like we can't pronounce that name. Is it Gabriel? Is it Gabriel? Is it? I think it's Gabriel. Gabriel. Okay. All right. Let me drop this. Look at the material. She's gonna just grow and have so many beautiful pops. Okay, so I'm gonna fill up this with some more soil, and then we move on to the next question. My book is covered in soil. Oh dear Lord. The next question is by Soti, and she's asking, how do I make fertilizer at home on a budget? Girl, in this economy, I understand why you're asking me that question, because fertilizers, store-bought fertilizers can be quite expensive, or are getting quite expensive, at least for us in this part of the world. So when it comes to making fertilizer at home, we're going to be answering that while I report this golden pothos by, it's actually a client of mine. She bought this plant for me when it was quite small, and she's taking good care of it, and she sent it to me to report. So I'm going to be dividing it and reporting it. So yeah. Okay, so when it comes to homemade fertilizers, babes, there are actually quite a lot of DIY like homemade fertilizer hacks. Oh my god, I have to always show you guys these roots, because they are like, oh, sis was so root bound. This was so root bound. I think I'm gonna have to get a knife. Okay, no need for that. Okay, I think this should do it. Okay, great. Over to you guys. Sorry. So when it comes to homemade fertilizers, there are so many YouTube videos out there showing you these like homemade fertilizer hacks. Like, you could use things like your banana peels, soak them in water. You can use eggshells, all of that. So check those out. However, the problem with that is that those are not like balanced fertilizers. They may just provide 1 or 2 nutrients for your plants, but if you want overall growth in your plants, the key thing your plants need to have is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And sometimes the only way you can get that in the full balanced quantity is from a chemical fertilizer that you buy in your store, right? But another great home alternative is to compost. Babe, look, I'm gonna start composting soon, and it's something I advise like all the garden girlies. I'm not like a composting expert, but there's again ton of information on YouTube on how to actually compost. So I would strongly advise you get into composting, babes. Check those videos out and see how you can make your own compost fertilizer. So compost fertilizers are very high in organic matter, which enriches the soil, and your plants will greatly benefit from all of that. So start composting. It's a long process, but like if you start today, in a couple of months, maybe 3 months max, you're gonna have enough organic fertilizer basically to last you for a year if it's just you using it. So yeah, babes, definitely compost or do one of those DIY little fertilizer hacks you see on YouTube. Yeah, I hope I was able to answer that question. Sorry, this thing I'm doing is making me a bit uncoordinated, but I hope I was able to answer that question well, love. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. This next one is from Acid Dominic, and he asks, hello, I really enjoy your content and your multicolored shirt. Oh my god, thank you. Wanted to ask about pest control routine, and also if you use a moisture meter. Somebody also asked a similar question, so I'm gonna hold them together and answer them as well. This one was from Ginger Lily, and she said, would love to hear your recommended pest control prevention routine when bringing plants back inside or at the end of summer. Okay, so babes, I'm gonna answer Dominic first and move over to Ginger Lily. So when it comes to my recommended pest routine, okay, I've talked about this before. Some of the girlies don't like it when I say this, but a systemic pesticide has greatly helped to reduce the pest pressures I have. I used to battle pests every 5 working days in these garden streets, but the moment I introduced a systemic pesticide in my collection and in my gardening, it has drastically reduced. Just whenever I see pest infestation, I then apply my systemic pesticide. Or if I see that that plant is like extremely pest prone, I would then go to my systemic pesticide. But one thing I've quickly realized is that, and this is something I want to encourage you all to do, when it comes to plants that are actually really pest prone, like your alocasias, for me it's my hibiscuses, because I grow hibiscuses outdoors. Those really pest prone plants, do not wait until you see pest on them before you treat them for pest. Please do not, because once you see pest on them, I feel like you've already lost the battle to a certain extent. But spray neem oil on them regularly, like have like a weekly routine where you spray regardless of whether you see pest on them or not. Just have a weekly routine. That has worked greatly for my alocasia and my hibiscus, those two. Just have a weekly routine where you're like, okay, every Saturday I'm gonna spray neem oil or horticultural oil on this babe here. When it comes to alocasias, please do not use systemic, because spider mites will just grow fatter when you use a systemic on them. But yet, like, just, you know, do that. Okay, don't wait until you see a pest before you start treating it. And then secondly, showering your plants, especially your indoor plants. So these outdoor plants are exposed to rain, and the rain actually really helps to keep away the pests from establishing properly, like it washes them away. But if you're growing your plants indoors, please form the habit of regularly showering your plants. That will actually help to just reduce pests that are, any pest population that is establishing. So I hope I answered that. I feel like my answer was all over the place, but I hope you were able to take something out of that, Dominique. And as for you, Gingerly, so when it comes to bringing pests in, plants indoors from outdoors, so I do happen to grow plants outdoors and indoors, and from time to time I would interchange them depending on my mood. Can you see this Perseverity that is here now? She was growing outdoors and I just recently brought her inside. So yeah, so I know what you mean by this. So you don't, first of all, don't overly complicate it. I feel like a lot of the girlies on Instagram like to overly compliment this whole routine with bringing plants indoors. No, a simple advice is just shower the plants. Shower it just to make sure it's free from dust and all those outdoor yucky things, spider webs, pests. Shower the plant, and when you shower that plant with a hose, then just spray a systemic on that plant or apply it to the soil. And then if it's a plant that grew in a direct sun, you want to place it next to a window or right underneath a bright light. Okay, if not, the transition will just be, the reduction in the light will just be so much that it might go into shock and start losing leaves. So that's just pretty much all you have to bear in mind. It's not as complicated as some of the Instagram girlies make it seem to be. All right, let me finish this up. This is taking a lot of my concentration, guys. Let me finish this up and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, right, so we're done. So I'm gonna hydrate this. I'm gonna let the leaves plump up. Then I'm still gonna do some propagation for her just to fill up the entire pot, so it's not just, so this bowl patch, these bowl patches aren't just left there. So yeah, but I'm gonna leave the plant to plump up for a day or two before I do so. Yeah, so let's move on to the next question. Let me get this off. Okay. All right. Oh my god, girlies, you know what I just realized? We're almost done with the questions and we still have lots of reporting to do. Oh my dear Lord. Anyways, let's just continue. Let's just proceed and see where we are able to reach this video. Do you guys remember when I bought this plant? I remember talking to you guys about how this plant is so rare, and somebody, I think I bought it when it was just like, I think it was just maybe these 2 leaves, if I'm not mistaken. And look how fast she has grown, and she has even become so bound in just a matter of maybe 3 months. This is why I say in this part of the world, like, growing your plants in this small pot gets quite redundant, you know. It's quite redundant. So okay, so let's move on to the next question. Oh, look at those yummy roots. Look at those yummy roots. Okay, so next question is from Olami Kemi. This is for my fellow Nigerian girlie from the name, and she asks, hi, my elephant plant leaves turn yellow and die. A new leaf grows out and the same thing happens again. Babes, that is very typical of Alocasia, especially that particular plant. They are notorious for doing that. I stumbled upon an interesting theory, and I think I completely believe this, and I feel that might be the case. Ouch, this plant actually does have spines, so guys, you want to be careful. So anyways, I stumbled upon an interesting theory, and I think that might be the case. So the person said that with Alocasias, especially ones that have big leaves, is if you're not fertilizing them enough, they will not have the energy to maintain all those leaves. So what will happen is that the plant, when it produces a new leaf, to compensate for all the energy and the lack of nutrients that it doesn't have, is then going to let go of an older leaf. All right, and it makes perfect sense, because when you're talking about your elephant ear Alocasia, it's a big plant, it's a huge plant. So in order for you to maintain those big leaves, you need to fertilize that plant heavily. I would say it's a heavy feeder. You need to fertilize that plant, and then use a fertilizer that is high in nitrogen and also high in like other elements like potassium. I'll say well-balanced fertilizer, because it's not just the energy or the nutrient required to produce that leaf, but like the nutrient also required to sustain the structure of that leaf. Moral of the story is, maybe you're not fertilizing that Alocasia enough. It's a heavy feeder and requires a well-balanced fertilizer. Okay, I think somebody asked me a question on the Alocasia. Unfortunately, I didn't include it here, but I think I can remember it off memory. I'm going to insert the question if I can't find it here. The person was basically asking me how to take care of that same massive Alocasia, and I'm going to say, you guys overseas, you guys really like to grow every plant indoors. In this part of the world, that plant is actually an outdoor plant. In fact, we even eat the combs of the plant. It's part of our delicacy. So it's grown in the farm. Nobody grows there. Nobody grows it indoors. So if you're growing indoors, I will say, babes, you definitely want to get yourself like very good grow lights. It's a plant that likes a lot of light. And then, like I advised Kemi, you definitely want to like fertilize. Like you want to really fertilize this plant. This is not a plant that you just fertilize sporadically. I'll say fertilize each time you water with like a well-balanced fertilizer. And then also, I think for Alocasias, I don't want to keep them moist, but since you're growing it indoors, I would strongly advise you just water when the soil has dried, but don't leave it to stay dry for too long. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. I can still remember the question, but I hope that answers that. This, my beautiful aglonema, needs to be reported. I'm thinking, is this pot? I feel like this pot is almost pretty much the same size. Do I have a bigger pot here? Hang on, girlies, I'm trying not to. Okay, I think this one is bigger, so let's use this pot. So yeah, I love this. Look at the material, guys. Okay, so let's move on to, look at the roots. Look at the roots, babes. Let's move on to our last question. Can you guys tell that I'm trying to stall? I don't want this video to end. I don't want this video to end, but let's move on to our last question, which is by Flora Interior. Flora said, I can't stop propagating my plants. Okay, I don't need any more. I don't have any more space for them, but it makes me so happy to see them multiply. Any tips to quit a propagation addiction? Flora. Honestly, I don't think we talk enough about propagation addiction. Some of you girlies just love to propagate, and you forget that once you propagate that plant, you've got more plants on your hands. So Flora babes, I think the problem you have is that you are propagating plants that are too easy to propagate. I think that's the thing. That's what's causing the addiction. You're propagating plants that are too easy to propagate. Like this plant, for example, so super easy to propagate. If I wanted to, I'll just divide. Maybe I might even divide this plant right here. Maybe. I mean, I could divide this plant and make my money. Actually, while we're here, let's do that. Let's do that because, please, I have bills to pay. Flora, you've inspired me to be a propagation addict. But yeah, like, you are propagating plants that are too easy to propagate. Like in this case, all I have to do is just break it apart gently, and I have propagated it. So you see how easy that is? I'm gonna report this into this right now. I want you to start taking on plants that are notoriously difficult to propagate. I want you to start taking plants that propagate very slowly. Have you tried to propagate a ZZ from one leaf? I guarantee if you do so, you're going to give up on propagation. Because from one leaf, it will take literally a year. Look at an earthworm, babes. Look at an earthworm. Can you see it? Can you see it wiggling? From one leaf, it will take literally a year for that plant to be viable. I have a philodendron sodoroi, and if somebody had told me this plant was so difficult to propagate, I would not have believed. That took 1 year. First of all, I took multiple cuttings. Before those cuttings could root, it took 960 years, and not all of them even rooted. And the one that eventually rooted, it took 1 year before that plant became a viable plant, before I could actually see roots and it bring out leaves rather. So I want you to start propagating plants like that, okay? Or have you tried growing things from seed? Okay, I want you to grow a cactus from seed. by the time it takes you 3 years, by the time it takes you 3 years for that seed to sprout, for it to become a viable plant, that propagation addiction will end. So I think the problem is that you're propagating plants that are just too... Baby, there's something interesting, an interesting development with the leaves of this aglaonema. Can you see how some of the new leaves have come out to be thin and like thinner? Look at this. Can you see that? Whereas the older leaves are broader. So that's quite maybe it's an interesting mutation. I don't know. Maybe I've just not been fertilizing this plant enough. Oh my god, that could be a problem because it's been so root bound, and maybe it has just not had the energy to, like, the nutrient energy to produce these new leaves. Oh, that's probably why, to produce these bigger leaves. So I'm going to fertilize all these plants I've reported after this. Flora, I hope that answers your question, guys. Okay, thankfully it wasn't a plant. I hope that answers your question, guys. And yeah, I think we are done. I still have some other plans that I need to report, but I'm going to report them off camera or maybe some other day. I've become so bad at procrastinating these days when it comes to reporting. But guys, we've come to the end of this video, and I really hope you enjoyed kicking with me. Shout out to people that made it to the end of this video, like you're my home girls. I mean, should we have a code word? I think our code word should be let our code word be green pot. Green pot is our code word. If you say green pot, I know you're my OG, you're my bestie, you're my home girl, you're my ride and or die. You're one of the good ones. Okay, so I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Let me clean up this mess, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Bye, babes.